The bitter January rain pelted against the window of Michael Thompson's bedroom, mirroring the storm that had taken residence in his soul for the past 7 months. The 38-year-old office manager sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the empty space beside him where Sarah used to sleep. The alarm clock on the nightstand read 5:43 a.m., another night of restless sleep and persistent stomach pain. Michael dragged himself to the bathroom, wincing as he splashed cold water on his face. The mirror reflected a man he barely recognized anymore. Hollow cheeks, dark circles under bloodshot eyes, and a complexion that had grown increasingly sallow. He'd lost 20 pounds since the accident, but the doctors had attributed his deteriorating health to grief and stress. "It's just grief," he whispered to himself, repeating what the physicians had told him during his last 3 visits. Just grief. But grief didn't explain the metallic taste that lingered in his mouth or the mysterious hair loss that had started 2 months ago. It didn't explain why his hands sometimes trembled uncontrollably or why his legs felt like lead weights when he climbed the stairs to his Portland office building. Michael shuffled to the kitchen, his body protesting with each step. The house was eerily quiet without Emma's giggles or Jake's thundering footsteps racing down the hallway, without Sarah's melodic humming as she prepared breakfast. The silence was deafening, a constant reminder of what he had lost on that rainy highway 7 months ago. He reached for the bag of premium coffee beans his mother-in-law Victoria had started sending him after the funeral. "To help you get through these difficult mornings," she'd said with a sympathetic smile. It was the special blend from Whitmore Coffee House, the upscale cafe chain owned by Sarah's family. The familiar aroma filled the kitchen as the coffee machine hummed to life. The morning ritual was one of the few constants left in Michael's shattered world. Wake up, make coffee, try to function, repeat. As he waited for the coffee to brew, his phone buzzed with a message from Victoria Whitmore. "Checking in on you, dear. Robert and I would love to have you for dinner this weekend. Please say yes." Michael stared at the message, feeling a mix of gratitude and unease. His in-laws had been unusually attentive since the accident. Weekly dinners, constant check-ins, and Victoria had even offered to help manage the $5 million life insurance payout until he was thinking clearly again. The coffee machine beeped. Michael poured the steaming liquid into his favorite mug, a Father's Day gift from Emma and Jake, with "World's Best Dad" painted in wobbly letters. He took a sip, grimacing slightly at the increasingly bitter taste. Even coffee didn't taste the same anymore. His stomach clenched immediately, a familiar pain radiating through his abdomen. Michael leaned against the counter, breathing slowly until the wave subsided. Another day, another battle with his mysteriously failing body. The doorbell rang, startling him. It was barely 6:15 a.m., too early for visitors. Michael approached cautiously, peering through the peephole to see a young boy, perhaps 12 or 13, standing on his porch. The child was thin, dirty, with clothes that hung from his small frame. One of the homeless kids from downtown, Michael guessed. Against his better judgment, Michael opened the door. "Can I help you?" The boy's eyes darted nervously around, refusing to meet Michael's gaze. "Are you Mr. Thompson, the one whose family died in the car crash?" Michael flinched at the blunt question. "Yes, I am." Without another word, the boy thrust a crumpled piece of paper into Michael's hand and bolted down the street, disappearing around the corner before Michael could react. With trembling fingers, Michael unfolded the note. The handwriting was messy, childlike, but the message hit him like a physical blow. "Don't drink the coffee, they're poisoning you. Same way they killed others." Michael stared at the words, his coffee mug slipping from his grasp and shattering on the floor, the dark liquid spreading like a stain across the white tiles. "You need to calm down, son," Gary Thompson said, his weathered hands steady as he carefully collected a sample of the spilled coffee. At 65, the retired federal agent moved with the precision of someone who had spent decades gathering evidence. His silver hair and lined face couldn't mask the sharp intelligence in his eyes. Calm down. Did you read this? Michael thrust the crumpled note toward his father again. Someone is poisoning me, and they might have... He couldn't finish the sentence, the implication too horrific to voice. Gary pocketed the coffee sample in a small evidence bag. We don't know anything yet. This could be some cruel prank or a confused kid. Then explain why I've been sick for months. The hair loss, the stomach pain, the weakness, which could all be symptoms of grief, Gary interrupted gently. But I agree something's not right. That's why we're going to test the coffee and get you to a toxicologist today. My old partner Marcus works at the private lab downtown. He owes me a favor. Michael collapsed onto a kitchen chair, head in his hands. Dad, what if the accident wasn't an accident? What if Sarah and the kids... One thing at a time, Gary said firmly, squeezing his son's shoulder. First, we find out if you're being poisoned. Then we follow the evidence. 4 hours later, they sat in the sterile office of Dr. Elena Reyes, a toxicologist at Portland General Hospital. The petite woman with intelligent eyes studied Michael's test results with growing concern. These symptoms are consistent with thallium poisoning, she said finally, removing her glasses. The hair loss, gastrointestinal issues, neurological symptoms, your blood tests confirm it. Thallium? Gary leaned forward. That's not something you accidentally ingest. No, it's not, Dr. Reyes agreed. It's historically known as the poisoner's poison because it's odorless, tasteless, and the symptoms often mimic other conditions. In small doses over time, it causes a slow, painful decline that can be mistaken for natural illness. Michael felt the room spin. Someone has been deliberately poisoning me? Dr. Reyes nodded grimly. We need to start chelation therapy immediately to remove the thallium from your system. And Mr. Thompson, she added gravely, you need to contact the police. This is attempted murder. Not yet, Gary interjected. If someone is trying to kill Michael, alerting the authorities might cause them to accelerate their plans or destroy evidence. Dr. Reyes frowned. That's not protocol. I was federal law enforcement for 30 years, Gary cut in. Trust me when I say we need to be strategic. Can you treat my son discreetly while we investigate? The doctor hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. I can document this as suspected heavy metal poisoning without specifics. But you have limited time to handle this yourselves. As they left the hospital, Michael's phone buzzed with another text from Victoria. You missed our coffee date this morning. Are you feeling worse? Should we call Dr. Bennett? She seems awfully concerned about your health, Gary observed, reading over Michael's shoulder. Victoria's always been that way, Michael replied, but doubt had taken root. But why would my in-laws want to kill me? They loved Sarah and the kids. 5 million reasons, Gary said grimly. The life insurance money. Who's the contingent beneficiary if something happens to you? Michael stopped walking. I'm not sure. Sarah handled all that. We need to find out. And we need to find that boy who warned you. That night, as Michael lay in his hospital bed, receiving his first chelation treatment, he thought about the homeless boy's frightened face. How had a street kid known someone was poisoning him? And what did he mean by same way they killed others? The pieces weren't fitting together yet, but Michael couldn't shake the growing suspicion that the accident that took his family might not have been an accident at all. The thought made him physically ill, bile rising in his throat. His phone lit up with another text from Victoria. Robert and I are so worried. We're coming to see you tomorrow morning. Michael showed the message to his father, who was setting up a cot in the hospital room. Perfect, Gary said, a determined gleam in his eye. Let them come. But first, we need to find that boy. The downtown streets of Portland were slick with rain as Michael and Gary drove slowly through the areas known to house the city's homeless population. After 3 days of hospital treatment, Michael already felt stronger, though Dr. Reyes had warned that recovery would take time. There! Michael pointed suddenly at a small figure huddled in the doorway of an abandoned building. That's him. Gary parked the car and approached the boy slowly, hands visible. Hey there. We're not here to hurt you. We just want to talk about the note you delivered. The boy scrambled to his feet, ready to run, but Michael stepped forward. Please, you might have saved my life. I need to know how you knew. Something in Michael's face must have convinced him. The boy hesitated, then nodded once. Name's Danny, he said cautiously. I'm 13. Been on the street since my mom died last year. They brought Danny to a nearby diner, ordering him a hot meal while he eyed them suspiciously. Only after devouring a hamburger and fries did he begin to talk. I do odd jobs for people sometimes. Deliver packages, messages, whatever pays, Danny explained, warming his hands around a mug of hot chocolate. 3 months ago, this lady hired me to keep an eye on your house, paid me $20 a day just to watch who came and went. What lady? Gary asked. Danny shrugged. Fancy older lady. Expensive clothes, lots of jewelry. She'd meet me behind the Whitmore Coffee House on Morrison Street. Michael and Gary exchanged glances. Victoria, Michael whispered. After a while I started hearing things, Danny continued. The lady would talk on the phone while waiting for me, talking about how you weren't dying fast enough, how they needed to increase the dose. Michael felt sick. And you figured out they were poisoning me? Danny nodded. 2 weeks ago, I followed her inside the coffee shop. Saw her talking to some barista in the back room. She gave him a little bottle, told him to make sure it all went into your special coffee beans. Which barista? Gary pressed. Tall guy, tattoo of a snake on his neck. They called him Ricky. Gary pulled out his phone, typing notes. And you decided to warn Michael because... Danny's eyes dropped to the table. My mom, she died the same way. Got sick real slow, hair falling out, always in pain. I heard the doctors talking about poison, but nobody believed them because she was just a junkie. His voice cracked. Then I heard the fancy lady on the phone saying you were the third one they'd done this to. I figured my mom might have been one of the others. Michael reached across the table, squeezing Danny's thin shoulder. You did the right thing. You saved my life. Gary leaned forward. Danny, would you recognize the bottle they were putting in the coffee? The boy nodded. Small brown bottle, had some weird letter on it. Looked like a backward K. That's the chemical symbol for thallium, Gary muttered. We need to get evidence, and we need to find out who else they might have killed this way. And over the next 3 days, Gary used his old contacts to build a case. Through careful research, they discovered that Michael's life insurance policy named Victoria and Robert Whitmore as secondary beneficiaries to provide for the children's education in the unlikely event of both Michael and Sarah's deaths. Meanwhile, Michael continued his chelation treatments, pretending to grow weaker when Victoria and Robert visited. He described new, frightening symptoms, watching their poorly concealed satisfaction. You really should let us help manage things, Victoria suggested during one visit, patting his hand with false sympathy. The insurance money, the house. It's too much for you to handle in your condition. I'm just so tired all the time, Michael responded weakly. Maybe you're right. That evening, Gary returned to the hospital room with Danny and a heavy folder of documents. I found something, he said grimly, spreading papers across Michael's bed. 3 cases in the last 5 years, all connected to the Whitmores, all involving mysterious illnesses that were eventually attributed to natural causes, all resulting in property or insurance payouts that somehow benefited Victoria and Robert. Michael stared at the photos of the victims, a business partner of Robert's who'd become ill after dissolving their partnership, a wealthy widow who'd changed her will to include Victoria's charitable foundation shortly before her death, and a young woman who'd been briefly engaged to Robert's nephew. They're serial killers, Michael whispered. Gary nodded. Part of something bigger, I think. The barista, Ricky. He's got connections to a local crime family. I think your in-laws have been working with professionals to eliminate people and take their assets. But why Sarah and the kids? Michael's voice broke. Why my family? The accident report, Gary said heavily. I had my old partner take another look. The brake lines had been cut. It was made to look like wear and tear, but it was deliberate. Michael closed his eyes, pain washing over him. Then, after a long moment, he opened them with newfound resolve. "We're going to make them pay," he said quietly. "All of them." Danny, who had been silent until now, spoke up. "I can help. I know all their routines, where they go, who they meet." Gary looked at the boy thoughtfully. "We're going to need to set a trap. And Michael, you're going to need to appear to be dying." The Whitmore estate sat on a hillside overlooking Portland, its manicured lawns and colonial architecture a testament to old money and influence. As Michael's car pulled into the circular driveway, he checked his appearance in the rearview mirror. The makeup artist Gary had hired, a former colleague who specialized in undercover work, had transformed him into a walking corpse. Hollow cheeks, yellowish skin, and eyes sunken into dark sockets stared back at him. "Remember," Gary's voice came through the nearly invisible earpiece, "get them talking. We need confessions. The cameras are in your watch, tie clip, and the pen in your pocket." Michael took a deep breath and exited the car, his movements deliberately slow and pained. Victoria opened the front door before he could knock, her perfectly arranged silver hair and elegant appearance contrasting sharply with his deteriorated state. "Michael, darling," she exclaimed, not quite hiding her satisfaction at his appearance. You look like you should be resting. Come in, come in." The house smelled of expensive perfume and the roast dinner Robert was carving in the dining room. He looked up as Michael entered, a glass of whiskey in hand. "My God, man," Robert said, unable to completely mask his pleasure. "You look terrible." "The doctors don't know what's wrong," Michael said weakly, lowering himself into a chair. "They're talking about organ failure now." Victoria clicked her tongue sympathetically as she poured wine. "Such a mystery. Have you updated your will, dear, with your health declining so rapidly?" "Actually," Michael coughed dramatically, "that's why I wanted to see you both. I've made some decisions about the insurance money in the house." Robert set down his carving knife, suddenly alert. "Oh, I want you to handle everything," Michael said, his voice trembling with manufactured weakness. "You're the only family I have left, the only connection to Sarah and the kids." Victoria and Robert exchanged a quick, triumphant glance before composing their features back into sympathy. "Of course we'll help," Victoria said, squeezing his shoulder. "Family takes care of family." "That's what I thought when you started sending me that special coffee," Michael said innocently. "It was so thoughtful of you." A moment of silence fell over the room. Robert cleared his throat. "Yes, well, Victoria thought you needed something premium during your grief." "It did taste different," Michael continued, watching them carefully. "Almost like it had something extra in it." Victoria's smile froze. "Just premium beans, dear. Nothing special." Michael reached for his water glass with a shaking hand, deliberately knocking it over. As Victoria rushed to clean up the spill, he said casually, "Did you know they tested me for poison at the hospital? Thallium, specifically." The cloth in Victoria's hand stilled. "How unexpected." "Ridiculous accusation," Robert said too quickly. "Who would poison you?" "That's what I said," Michael agreed. "I told them my in-laws would never do such a thing, not after what happened to Sarah and the kids." The room grew unnaturally quiet. Michael could almost hear Gary's voice in his head. "Push harder." "It's strange, though," Michael continued, his voice growing faint. "The doctors said my symptoms started right around when you began sending me that coffee." Robert's face hardened. "Are you accusing us of something, Michael?" No, Michael backpedaled, playing his role. "I just found it odd, like I found it odd that the brake lines failed on Sarah's car that day." Victoria's wine glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the hardwood floor, red liquid spreading like blood. "Accidents happen," she said coldly, her sympathetic facade cracking. "Yes, they do," Michael agreed, his voice suddenly stronger. But poisonings aren't accidents, are they, Victoria?" Robert stood abruptly. "I think you should leave." "Why?" Michael challenged, rising to his feet, dropping the act of weakness. Because I'm not dying fast enough. Because your plan to get the insurance money isn't working. Victoria's face transformed, sympathy replaced by cold calculation. You don't know what you're talking about. I know about the others, Michael said. The business partner, the widow, the young woman who was engaged to your nephew. I know about Ricky at the coffee shop and the thallium he's been adding to my special blend. Robert lunged forward suddenly, grabbing Michael by the collar. You have no proof. No one will believe you. Michael smiled for the first time. I don't need anyone to believe me. I just needed you to confess. Understanding dawned in Robert's eyes. He released Michael and began frantically searching him for recording devices. It was Victoria's idea, Robert said, suddenly backing away. The accident, the poison, all her plan. Victoria's face contorted with rage. You spineless! She caught herself, composing her features. Michael, darling, you're confused. The grief, the illness. It's making you paranoid. Is that what you told the others before they died? Michael asked quietly. Before you killed them for their money? We didn't kill anyone, Victoria insisted, but her voice lacked conviction. Sarah and the children were an accident, Robert offered desperately. We only meant to incapacitate you temporarily, just long enough to get control of the finances. Victoria slapped her husband hard across the face. Shut up, you fool. Too late, Michael said, as police sirens became audible in the distance. It's all on record now. As realization dawned on their faces, Michael added, I stopped drinking the coffee weeks ago. I'm not dying, but your freedom is about to flatline. Victoria lunged for a decorative letter opener on the sideboard, but before she could reach Michael, the front door burst open. Gary entered with 2 police officers, his old badge temporarily reinstated for the operation. Victoria and Robert Whitmore, Gary announced formally. You're under arrest for attempted murder, conspiracy, and based on what we just heard, possibly 3 counts of first-degree murder. As the officers handcuffed the stunned couple, Michael stepped close to his mother-in-law. Sarah and the children loved you, he whispered. How could you do this to them? For a brief moment, something like regret flickered across Victoria's face. Then it hardened into contempt. Business is business. Nothing personal. It was personal to me, Michael replied, and justice will be personal too. The following weeks unfolded in a whirlwind of police interrogations, evidence gathering, and media frenzy. The arrests of Victoria and Robert Whitmore, prominent members of Portland society, created shockwaves through the community. Their connections to a larger criminal organization specializing in sophisticated poisonings and asset theft began to unravel, exposing a network that stretched back decades. Michael sat in the district attorney's office, listening as prosecutor Eliza Jameson outlined the case. The Whitmores have turned on each other, she explained, shuffling through confessions and plea bargains. Robert claims Victoria masterminded everything. Victoria insists she was just the social connection, while Robert handled the technical aspects. What about my family? Michael asked, the pain still raw. Sarah and the children? Eliza's expression softened. Based on Robert's confession, they never intended to kill your family. The brake tampering was meant to cause an accident that would injure you, making the subsequent poisoning seem more plausible. Your wife taking the car that day was an unexpected complication in their plan. Michael closed his eyes, the bitter irony washing over him. His family had died because of a mistake, the wrong target in the wrong vehicle. The randomness of it made their deaths even more senseless. And the barista? Ricky? Singing like a canary, Gary interjected from his position by the window. He's connected the Whitmores to at least 2 other poisoning cases we didn't know about. This operation has been going on for years. The good news, Eliza continued, is that with the evidence you gathered and the confessions we've obtained, the Whitmores will never see freedom again. Neither will several of their associates. Michael nodded, but victory felt hollow. No conviction would bring back Sarah's laugh, or Emma's curious questions, or Jake's boundless energy. Justice was cold comfort for an empty house. As they left the courthouse, Michael spotted Danny sitting on the steps, his too thin frame drowning in an oversized hoodie. The boy had been crucial to the investigation, identifying key players and locations that helped build the case. "What happens to him now?" Michael asked his father quietly. Gary sighed. "Back to the system, I suppose. Foster care if he's lucky, the streets if he's not." Michael watched the boy for a long moment, thinking about everything he had lost and everything Danny had never had. An idea began forming. Not a replacement for what was gone, but perhaps a new beginning for both of them. That evening, Michael stood in the children's bedroom of his home, looking at toys that would never be played with again and books that would never be read aloud. The pain was still there, a constant companion, but something else had joined it: purpose. He picked up Emma's favorite stuffed elephant, remembering how she'd insisted on reading to it every night. "Books are magic, Daddy," she told him seriously. "They take you places even when you can't go anywhere." Michael set the elephant down gently and made a decision. 3 months later, on a bright spring morning, Michael stood with Danny and Gary outside a newly renovated building in downtown Portland. The sign above the entrance read, "Emma and Jake Thompson Children's Library." "You sure about this?" Gary asked, watching as Danny shifted nervously in his new sneakers and clean clothes. Michael nodded. "The adoption paperwork went through yesterday, and the library foundation is fully funded. It's what Sarah would have wanted." Danny looked up at Michael. "You really want me, even though I'm not, normal?" Michael placed his hand on the boy's shoulder. "Normal is overrated. You're brave, smart, and you saved my life. That makes you family in my book." As they cut the ribbon and opened the doors to families waiting outside, Michael felt a weight lift slightly from his heart. The $5 million insurance money had found its purpose: part funding the library, part establishing college funds for disadvantaged children, and part creating a new home for a boy who deserved a chance. The library's main room featured a wall-sized photograph of Sarah, Emma, and Jake, their smiles frozen in time, but their legacy continuing in every child who would find refuge and adventure among the shelves. "Your family would be proud," Gary said quietly, watching as Danny enthusiastically showed younger children where to find the adventure books. "They are still my family," Michael replied. "And now, so is he." He gestured toward Danny, who caught his eye and grinned. The pain would never completely disappear, and the betrayal would always sting. But as Michael watched children flooding into the library, their faces lighting up at the colorful spaces designed just for them, he felt something he hadn't experienced since the accident: hope. 1 year later, Michael sat in the courtroom as the judge delivered the final sentences in the case against what prosecutors had dubbed the Poisoner's Ring. Victoria and Robert Whitmore received consecutive life sentences without possibility of parole for their roles in multiple murders and attempted murders. Several associates, including Ricky the barista, received substantial prison terms. The investigation had expanded far beyond Portland, uncovering similar operations in 3 other states. In each location, wealthy targets had been identified, isolated, and slowly poisoned while criminals positioned themselves to inherit assets or insurance payouts. The Whitmores' expertise in social engineering had made them particularly valuable to the criminal enterprise. As Michael exited the courthouse, reporters thrust microphones toward him. "Mr. Thompson, how does it feel to know justice has been served? Do you believe the full extent of the poisoning ring has been uncovered? What message do you have for other potential victims?" Michael paused, considering his words carefully. "Justice doesn't restore what was taken from me or from the other victims' families, but it does ensure no one else will suffer at their hands. If you notice unexplained symptoms or sudden health decline in yourself or loved ones, don't dismiss it. Question everything, especially unexpected kindness from those who might benefit from your misfortune. Back at home, a new home, smaller but warmer somehow. Danny was setting the table for dinner. At 14, he'd grown several inches in the past year, his formerly gaunt face filling out with regular meals and care. His grades had improved dramatically, and the nightmares about his mother's death had become less frequent. "How'd it go?" Danny asked, placing a casserole dish on the table. He'd discovered an aptitude for cooking, taking pride in mastering new recipes. "It's over," Michael replied simply. "They won't hurt anyone else." Gary arrived for their weekly family dinner, bringing his new girlfriend Patricia, a forensic accountant he'd met during the investigation. The house filled with conversation and occasional laughter sounds Michael had once thought he'd never hear again. Later that evening, after Danny had gone to bed, Michael sat with his father on the back porch, looking at stars emerging in the twilight sky. "I keep thinking about what Victoria said," Michael admitted. "Business is business, nothing personal. How could killing my family not be personal?" Gary sighed deeply. "Some people compartmentalize evil, son. They separate their actions from the consequences. It's how they sleep at night." "I still dream about them," Michael said softly. "Sarah and the kids. Sometimes they're just normal dreams, us at the beach or reading bedtime stories. Then I wake up and have to lose them all over again." "That never stops," Gary replied, his own thoughts turning to Michael's mother, gone 20 years now to cancer. "But eventually, the good memories start outnumbering the painful ones." Inside the house, a school photograph of Danny now hung alongside family pictures of Sarah, Emma, and Jake. Not a replacement, but an addition. An acknowledgement that hearts, like families, could expand. The Emma and Jake Thompson Children's Library had become a cornerstone of the community, offering not just books, but programs for at-risk youth. Michael volunteered there 3 days a week, reading to children and helping teens find resources for education and support. Several of Danny's former street friends had found refuge there, some eventually returning to school or finding stable housing. Michael had learned that healing wasn't a destination but a journey, uneven, unpredictable, with progress measured in small moments rather than grand gestures. The betrayal by his in-laws had nearly destroyed him, but it had also connected him to Danny, to a renewed relationship with his father, and to a purpose that honored Sarah's compassion and the children's potential. "You know what I realized today in court?" Michael said, watching as a shooting star traced briefly across the sky. "I'm not angry anymore, not because they deserve forgiveness, but because anger was keeping me tied to them. And I don't want any part of me connected to people capable of such calculated cruelty." Gary nodded in understanding. "That's not moving on. That's moving forward. There's a difference." In the quiet evening, Michael thought about the bitter taste of betrayal that had nearly ended his life. The poison had been removed from his body, the poisoners removed from society. What remained was a life reinvented, not the one he would have chosen, but one with meaning nonetheless. Inside, the light in Danny's room clicked off. The boy who had saved him was now family, another unexpected turn in a journey neither of them could have anticipated. Tomorrow, they would visit the library, continue building the legacy that kept Sarah, Emma, and Jake's memory alive, not through vengeance, but through helping others find their way. Michael looked up at the stars once more, imagining Sarah could see what he'd done with the shattered pieces of their life together. He hoped she would approve. "I'm ready," he said finally, standing up. "Let's go inside." If you enjoyed this tale of betrayal and redemption, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more captivating stories. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments below. What would you have done in Michael's situation? Your support means the world and helps bring more stories like this to life.